I am Sean Webb, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Rock Goddess, and I am rolling with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Dave Meltzer, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Zach Poitras, and this is Your Superior Self.
I'm Ginny Sarasvati, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, Superior Nation? Welcome back to Your Superior Self. I am Trey Downs, and thank you for taking the time to hang out and listen to this episode. It means a lot to me. Like, it really does. Thank you. Make sure you hit subscribe because I have a ton of great episodes coming up in the future. Going to start releasing more on Fridays just to get caught up a little bit. Getting a lot of demand to come on the show and a lot of people are interested in coming on and spreading their message with you. So I got to start pumping out that extra episode on Friday. So make sure you hit subscribe. You don't want to miss any of the guests that I have coming up, especially today's guest, Hendricks. He is awesome. He's the author of Conscious Luck. He co-wrote that with Carol Klein, and it's the 8 Secrets to Intentionally Change Your Fortune. It's all about the idea of luck. And some people are like, what are you talking about? But Hendricks is he's the best-selling author of the previous book, which I think this is a sequel to, titled The Big Leap. And in this book, he talks about how luck, changing his mind about luck and changing his mindset about how he is lucky, has changed a lot of his fortune in his life. Not necessarily money, but like relationships and experiences. And for those who don't know about him, Gay has been a leader in the fields of relationship transformation and body-mind therapies for more than 45 years. He earned his Ph.D. in counseling psychology from Stanford University. And I tell you what, I had an amazing conversation. Like, seriously, I know I always say amazing, but like literally moving for me, this conversation. And we talk about everything. We talk about conscious luck. We talk about meditation. We talk about a lot of things. And just as a little preview, this is Gay right here.
You know, you love psychology. Well, in psychology, one of the things we talk about a lot is that how people have an outer persona, an outer self, and they have an inner self inside. And the way you feel about yourself inside has a great deal to do with what happens outside in your life. And I always say that the longest journey any human ever makes is the 12-inch journey from their head down to their heart.
And Gay can pretty much drop the mic on that one. I've never heard that phrase. The longest journey anyone will ever experience on this earth is the 12 inches between your brain and your heart. Getting on the same page and those two separate beings is the hardest thing to accomplish. And I would like to say that I'm on that journey to try to gain heart and brain coherence, just because of the ideas and the feelings and the oneness that you experience, that being one with the world, with the consciousness that is all, and learning from that love is essential, that love is the key, that love is everything, and that we should really strip away our egos and be with the oneness so that way we can experience what true life meaning is. Like, that's what I'm about. And we had that conversation in here. We have a lot of deep moments where he is totally transparent about his life and where he's come from and what's helped him. And that's why I love doing this. I love being able to learn from people, and I hope that you guys are truly learning from these guests as much as I am, because my journey isn't just about me. It's about you, helping you guys along the way as I go, you guys go. And yeah, I'm excited for you guys to listen to this. Like, you guys, hopefully we can change your luck together. So before I get into it, I just want to remind you that you can follow me on social media. on Instagram at tdowns80, on Twitter at downstray. Check out the Facebook group, Your Superior Self. Like that, you can kind of see some of the behind the scenes action that I got going on for the podcast. It's Your Superior Self. Go to yoursuperiorself.com. Leave me a message. Let me know what you guys are up to, how you guys are changing your luck. How are you going to change your mindset so that you bring more positivity and some more blessings into your life? I really would love to hear what your journey entails and what you guys are up to. Now, with all that marketing junk said, let's get to the real reason why we're here, and that's to hang out with Gay Hendricks. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Gay Hendricks.
Hey, this is Gay Hendricks, and this is Your Superior Self.
Gay, thank you so much for joining this show. This is truly a treat. I am so obsessed with your book, Conscious Luck, right? I got this book when it came out in advanced reader copy, and I've been looking forward to this interview ever since because it's something that is different, the outlook of how to change your luck, right? And to actually think that you can do that. So can you give everyone kind of like the gist of it? Like, I mean, you know what? Don't even do that. Just go ahead and talk to us about how this book came about and why you wanted to write it.
Well, I think one of the most important things human beings can do is open themselves up to having good luck, better fortune. And one of the key things that people need to unlearn is the idea that luck is something that like strikes you by lightning or something you get born with. Maybe that happens sometimes, but what our book is about and what there's a lot of scientific support for is that you can actually change your luck, the actual things that happen to you in your life, by changing your mindset, by becoming willing to be luckier. Like the first chapter in Conscious Luck is all about opening up your willingness and making a commitment to being luckier every day. And that's so important because any big change process in life has to start with commitment. Whether it's marriage, you get up there and you say, I do, and that makes you committed. Or you buy a house and you write your name down on the line and you're committed. But until you're committed, you don't have any right to expect any kind of fulfillment from the situation because you haven't made a full-scale commitment. And so it's important to undertake anything with a sense of heartfelt commitment. So I invite people to make a heartfelt commitment to being luckier every day of their lives. And it doesn't cost you a nickel to make that commitment. All it requires is an investment of your heart. And so we show you how to do it in the book. We show you some kind of fancy ways to do it. But basically, the first part of the book is about changing your mindset so that you don't ward off miracles, so that you don't push away good luck. So many of us carry around feelings within ourselves. You love psychology. Well, in psychology, one of the things we talk about a lot is that how people have an outer persona, an outer self, and they have an inner self inside. And the way you feel about yourself inside has a great deal to do with what happens outside in your life. And I always say that the longest journey any human ever makes is the 12-inch journey from their head down to their heart.
Holy
to open
shit.
up.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for saying that. I didn't even think about that. Why is that?
Well, it's because people are trained to think of their feelings as scary. A lot of times, a lot of us got punished for having our feelings when we were kids. If we got angry in a way that people didn't like, we'd get whacked for it. I know I did. I grew up in an era when corporal punishment was much more popular, I think, than it is now. I think some of the stuff that happened to me and my family, people would get arrested for now, but it was just sort of the way things were. But the same thing with, human beings have three big emotions that we need to learn how to communicate with on a daily basis because they come up over and over again in life, and particularly in relationships. One of them is anger. All of us get angry from time to time, but it's the way you express anger that makes a difference in the quality of your relationships. One person may throw a temper tantrum, another person might stuff it inside, but neither one of them are good. The only thing that works in the area of emotional communication is looking somebody in the eye and saying, I'm angry with you.
Mm.
Or looking them in the eye, the other feeling, the chest-related feelings like sadness and grief, to be able to say, I feel sad about that. Or fear, to be able to say, I feel scared right now. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. So to be able to say those simple things makes a huge amount of difference in relationships. And it's what human beings need to focus on are mostly things that we could have learned in the first grade, but we didn't learn how to do it. We were memorizing the capital of South Dakota or something instead of that.
And I still don't remember what that is.
Pierre.
So like, speaking of that, right? Like, so why luck? Why not, why can't you change your mindset about happiness, or, why luck? Why conscious luck?
Oh, I think that we really can. And there are any areas of life that, I think the way I put it in our seminars is I say, you're only one breath and one positive thought away from changing anything. You see, the moment you go around thinking, I can't do that, or I'm not worthy, or I don't deserve love, all of those kind of unconscious thoughts that human beings carry around inside themselves. I don't know if you read my other book, The Big Leap, but it has to do with something I call the upper limit problem. It's the book that came out 10 years ago that's kind of conscious luck is sort of a sequel to, in a way. It's the next step beyond the big leap. But there are two big things in the big leap that I think everybody ought to know about. One is what I call the upper limit problem, the tendency to sabotage ourselves when things start going better. So something good happens at work, you go home at night and have an argument with your partner. Something good happens at night, go home or go to work tomorrow and have an upset at work. So it's this upper limit, this glass ceiling we place on how good life can be, and how much money we can make, and how much love we can bring into our lives. I call it the upper limit problem. And in the Big Leap, I show a bunch of ways to move through that. But what everybody needs to know is that all of your upper limit problems come out of fear. They come out of deep fears that we have, most of which go way back, like the fear that I don't deserve love. That's probably the most popular one. The feeling inside that I'm not worthy of good things happening in life. And there's something, back there's some good reason why you came to feel that way, but there's no good reason why you have to keep feeling that way, because the change of one tiny thought, just the idea, oh, I am worthy of love. Maybe somebody told me I wasn't back then, or maybe something bad happened to me back then, but right now I can change that. I'm open to luck. I'm open to luck in every moment. In fact, that's one thing I want to really stress, is that a lot of people have the limitation in their minds that luck is something that kind of hits them by lightning, or they get born with. But one of the things we say in the book is that luck is like a wind that's always blowing, and our job is to open our sails to it so that we get carried along on those winds that's already organically happening. So you don't need to put anything new in here so much as you need to get out of your own way so that you can ride those winds.
Well, it's like you're projecting that out into the universe, right? Like that idea that I am lucky. I know you had made some examples about how your family always said, we weren't lucky. We always had to work hard for our living, and that's their mindset, right? But until you changed your mindset, until I'm lucky, and there are some practices in this book where you actually have us write that make a commitment, right? Almost like a contract, almost. Speaking of which, how come you make them write? How come you make us write in the left hand too, like the non-dominant hand? What's the point behind that?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that, Trey. Okay, just to set the context, if people haven't read the book yet, there are some things we ask people to write out with their dominant hand, and then we ask them to write it out with their non-dominant hand. For me, I'm right-handed, so it's writing it out with my left hand. And the reason we do that is because the right side of your body is operated by the left side of your brain, and the left side of your body is operated by the right side of the brain. And so to kind of go back and forth, we're interested in a whole person feeling of luckiness inside. We don't just want it in your head, we want it down in your whole body. And so we go back and forth between the right and the left side. And it's kind of fun once you get into it. Did you have fun with it once you
Yeah, it
tried
was
it?
sloppy, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
definitely like, yeah.
yeah, it's definitely sloppy. Wait till you see mine. Even my good handwriting is not much to write home about. But yeah, so it helps integrate the brain. That's the bottom line.
Mm. And then and I was reading the book, which I love the book. And like I was telling you before air, like I read the book and I enjoyed it. And I just reread it today to kind of get ready for this interview. And I had forgotten how if you change your mind to basically say that, you're going to be lucky, you are lucky, and make that commitment, like you feel it, you feel more positive, you feel a difference. And I enjoyed it. You know, and then I read your story again and I started reading some really cool factoids about you. I think one, you were rated on the 250 list of most dangerous thinkers in American history. I mean,
Well,
because of this concept.
Well, that was a funny thing that my first book actually got banned by a right-wing group down in Texas, and I can't even remember the name of them now, but there was Citizens for a Great America or something like that. But they had made this list of 250 people, and I got on the list because I wrote a little book called The Centering Book, which I actually wrote when my daughter was in the first grade. I wrote this little book of relaxation exercises and stretches and things like that to get kids back in their seats after recess and kind of get things organized in the classroom. So I wrote this little book, and it became a surprise bestseller in the education world. And it caught the attention of some group down in Texas who put me on this list because one of the chapters in the book were some stretching exercises that came from a children's yoga book.
Mm-hmm.
And so they got after me because they criticized me, thought I was trying to import yoga into the schools and all this. And this is in 1975, where a lot of people didn't do yoga and things like that.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it probably wouldn't even be a blip. But somehow I got on this list, and they burned all of these people's books. And one of them was a book by Thomas Jefferson. He was on the list, and John Dewey, the great education professor from Columbia, was on the list. And who was the other person? Luther Burbank, the guy that was a great gardener or something. And there was all these people. Eleanor Roosevelt, she was on the list too.
Yeah.
And so I was very happy to be on the list with these people. And the nice thing was that once they did it, it made the book even into a bigger bestseller. So I was very happy about that.
You should have sent them a thank you or something.
I should have. Did you, I don't know if you saw the story in the book, you probably did, about the thing that happened to me when I was 14. I wanted to mention that because it was the first time that I ever entertained the concept in my mind that I could change something by shifting a thought in my mind.
Are you talking about the coin collection?
Yeah. And there was this kid named Danny, and I was sitting next to him, and they had a drawing in the movie theater, and there was probably 250 of us in the theater. And so they put all of our tickets with our names on it in a goldfish bowl, and they stirred it around, and they drew out 3 names. And just before they had the drawing, though, Danny leaned over to me and said, "Watch this, I'm going to win the drawing." And I said, "Okay." And so sure enough, they drew out 3 names, and he won the first prize, which happened to be a wristwatch. So this was in 1959. A wristwatch was a pretty big deal. And so afterwards, I asked him, "How did you do that?" And he said, "Oh, it's easy," he said. And he told me that he had noticed when he was younger, when he was even like in elementary school, that half of his family considered themselves lucky, and then the other half didn't, and all the good stuff always happened to the lucky ones. And so he figured this out, and he said, "I'm going to be one of the lucky ones." And so he just made this snap decision to take that mindset on. And he said he had won any number of drawings like that, and he'd also found lots of money on the ground as he just walked along. My daughter also had that skill when she was little. She could always, one day in Marin County, we were walking along in Sausalito, and she leaned over and picked up a $10 bill. that was big money for a 6-year-old kid, you know? And anyway, I asked her one time, how does she do that? How does she always find the money and that kind of thing? And she said something really interesting. She said, well, Dad, I pay attention. I pay attention, you know? And so I never had thought of it as being so simple as that, but in a way it is.
Well, what do you say to people when they say you don't know you're talking about, like luck? Like I can't change my luck. What are you? I mean, you hold a PhD in psychology. I mean, you have studied this. You're a big believer in this. You co-wrote this book with Carol Klein. You had mentioned in the book, you had mentioned that you had this concept for a long time, and you guys wanted to write this book, and you guys finally got together and write the book. Like when people say to you, "This isn't real," what do you say?
Well, I say, if you argue for your limitations, you'll get to keep them. And, you know, it's true, isn't it? Because if you go around saying, oh, I don't believe in that crap, you know, of course you're going to be limited.
Yeah.
And if you keep arguing for your limitations, you get to stay stuck and you get to be right. But which would you rather have? Would you rather be right or be happy? Would you rather be right or be lucky? I think once people get it presented to them like that, they'd be crazy to say, well, I think I'd rather be right. I don't care about being lucky. But I ask people right straightforward, just make the choice, you know, pick one. I'm a big cheerleader for it, but I'm not attached to it to the extent that I'm not going to go around preaching to people about it either.
Yeah, but this is your book, right? This is your idea. Like you know, I think what Carol Klein came to you and wanted to write the book. She had, I think in the book, she had mentioned that you had said something to her and it always stuck with her. And then something like that, right? Like this is a concept that you guys wanted to bring forth together.
Yes. Well, what happened was I wrote the first half of the book. If you notice, the first half of the book are the changes you need to make, the mindset changes. And then the second half of the book are kind of like the daily behaviors that you need to do. And that's the way the book is set up. So I wrote the first half of the book and got kind of the ideas in there that I wanted. But then I got busy writing mystery novels. I write mystery novels in my spare time. And one of my mystery novels got optioned for the movies, and I got lost over in the whole thing of turning it into a movie script and all that. And I left behind Conscious Luck kind of sitting there on my computer. And later, a couple of years later, actually, Carol Klein and I kept bumping into each other at the farmer's market. We live in the same little town here in California, Ojai, California, up in a little mountain valley about 90 minutes north of Los Angeles. And she kept asking me, hey, what are you going to do with Conscious Luck? Because I'd kind of talked to her about it. Finally, she said, hey, can I have it and work on the last half of it while you're working on your mystery novel? And that seemed like a dream solution. So I presented her the first half of the book, and she worked, and she kept sending me chapters and things. And Carol is an absolute dream to work with. She is, I mean, she's an angel in human form. We got through an entire book without a single crossword with each other, not a single broken agreement. Nobody had any hassles with each other. If you think about it, it's not easy to work with someone for 6 months or a year without having any kind of hassle.
I hear co-authors, like somebody's doing a lot of the heavy lifting whenever, right? Like, you know, Stephen Kotler has done a lot of co-writing with people. And one of the things he says is like, you know, if you co-write with someone and just expect to do a lot of the writing.
That's true. But Carol is different. She honors every agreement. If she says she's going to be in there with a chapter at 5 o'clock on Sunday, by golly, at 4:59, it'll land in my inbox.
Well, let me ask you this. So why was she so interested in this?
Well, I think she had her own experiences of conscious luck. She tells some great stories in the book, but one of them is a slogan that I've kind of adopted. She has this slogan, 20 seconds of insane courage. That's what she often teaches is when you have an opportunity, just go ahead and step into it with 20 seconds of insane courage. And she tells a story in the book about she was involved with a writing process where an author, a well-known author, wanted to get her to write the book for him, but didn't want to have her name on the cover. and she had done ghost writing before, but she was tired of that. She wanted to step out into her own. And so she had the 20 seconds of insane courage to say, no, I want to be on the cover of the book. I want to be a co-author. And the guy said, no. And then she said she had the 20 seconds of insane courage to say, okay, I'm going to pass on the project then. So you see, I bet you've discovered this, but I know you will by the time you get to be my age. Success is partly what you say yes to and partly what you say no to.
Oh,
That
wow.
you get to where you get in life by a lot of saying no. Like, have you ever thought of how an automatic pilot of an airplane works? Like, you're in Baltimore, right? And you
Mhm.
get on the plane and over at BWI, and
Mhm.
you and the plane is going to Los Angeles. You're coming to visit me. Come up here and have a cup of coffee with me when you're in town. And so
You're definitely buying gay. I'm telling you that right now.
well, you won't find a better cup of coffee. I'm kind of a connoisseur. I grind my own beans and
Oh,
everything like
really?
that. So we won't have to go out. But anyway, so let's say you're coming to visit me. You get on the airplane, that you take off, and the automatic pilot goes like this. We're drifting a little to the right. Correct. Okay. We're drifting a little, correct. We're drifting a little to the right. Correct. Drifting to the left. Correct. And so the time it actually spends on the button is relatively small compared to how much it spends drifting and recorrecting. And that's an important thing to realize because it gets from Baltimore to Los Angeles by being wrong most of the time.
Mhm. That's a
But
great
because
analogy.
it's willing to correct, it's willing to learn in every moment, it gets there just fine. And so that's the thing to keep to mind. It's all about learning as you go and self-correcting. It's like that riding those winds with your sails. If you watch how a hawk does it, it doesn't have to expend much effort at all because it learns how to just kind of jockey along with where the winds are blowing.
Well, you said self-correct, right? And I think you can apply that to this too, because you forget about that, right? Like you forget about the being conscious to look. We get bogged down in everyday life, and we get bogged down in the ego. We get bogged down in, what we're going through now, a pandemic, and course correct, right? Like, what do you do when you forget about being lucky, or that you can draw that type of luck to your life? How do you course correct? How do you regain that consciousness?
I have a couple of ways to do it. If I get in a low mood for any reason, or I'm not feeling lucky, I start at the very basics. I say, okay, to myself, how many species are there on planet Earth? Well, there are about 8.9 million species. There's 8.9 million things like us out there, like bugs and other stuff like that. In fact, I'd guess probably half of the stuff of the species are bugs of one kind or another.
Hmm.
But if you think about it, with almost 9 million species, what are the odds of you showing up in a species where you and I can have a conversation about luck on TV on the other side of the country from each
Hmm.
other?
Yeah.
And people often ask me when I'm giving lectures and things, um, if I believe in past lives or reincarnation. And I always say, I've never had an experience of anything like that, but I'm open-hearted about it because I'm not going to go around telling somebody like, hey, nothing like that exists, because when you think about it, is being born 2 or 3 times any stranger than being born one time? I mean, look what it took to get us here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing I always like to say when if I get into a low mood, when I'm not feeling lucky, is I remind myself that on the night of my conception, 250,000 little guys like me left my father and journeyed up to the egg, and I was the one that got there.
Mm. You're the
Wow.
winner.
Yeah, because that's like winning the New York Marathon. You know, 250,000 people are out there running, and you get there first.
That's awesome. Oh man, that's great. I love that analogy. Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, out of all the evolution, out of the entire inception of humanity, of the creation, and we're here for your parents to meet the way that they did, the way that they did, and your grandparents to meet the way that they did, and for all of that equation to, equal you here right now talking to me. I mean, that's pretty darn lucky.
It's pretty darn lucky because my grandparents, I happen to know because I've heard the story. I grew up with my grandparents, so I heard the story a bunch of times. My grandparents rode from Alabama down to Florida, where they made a home in the jungle around 1900 in a buggy, with a horse and all of that. And my granddad lived long enough to watch Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon.
Wow.
And I was sitting with my granddad. He was probably 92, I believe, when that happened.
92, watching that.
Yeah. And I remember the look on his face, just like it's almost, is this real? Are they making this up?
Mm-hmm.
And my granddad smoked 20 cigars a day, and sitting there bathed in cigar smoke, watching Neil Armstrong step off there. I remember that moment like it was yesterday.
That's awesome. That's a great memory. What made you go into psychology?
Oh, wonderful question. Thank you for asking me that. Well, it was a personal experience. I don't know if you read in one of my other books, but I suffered from childhood obesity. I was the only fat kid in a family where everybody else was skinny. My brother was skinny. My mother was skinny. My father was dead, but he had been relatively skinny. And so I was this oddball because I looked like a bowling ball and everybody else looked like the Washington Monument. And so I was taken around to all sorts of different medical specialists when I was a kid, and I got shots and I took pills, but it never really changed until one day in 1969, when I was 24 years old. I weighed 320 pounds. And by the way, just to show you, I'm 6 feet tall, so I weigh 180 pounds now. So I'm
looking good, man.
Relatively athletic. I work out at the gym 3 days a week and
looking good.
Pump iron. I'm kind of addicted to resistance training for 10 years now. And so anyway, to make a long story short, I had this moment when I was 24. I weighed over 300 pounds. I was puffing away on 2 or 3 packs of Marlboros a day. I was in a relationship that wasn't going well, at a job that I wasn't crazy about. Didn't like where I was living. And I went out for a walk. It was a snowy day in New Hampshire, and I went out for a walk, and I stepped on where the ice was frozen under the snow, and my feet shot out from under me, and I went whoomp down on my back. I didn't knock myself out, but I knocked myself out of myself for a moment, where for 2 minutes, I saw things about myself that I'd never seen before, because I was laying there on the ice, and I had landed just next to a kind of a jagged rock, and I realized, oh my gosh, I could be dead right now. If I'd landed 6 inches to the right, I'd have a hole in my head. And so I lay there and I was just contemplating on all that. And I had this very beautiful moment of a couple of minutes of like seeing down through all the different levels of myself. I could see down through where my fat was, and then I could see all my tense muscles underneath that. And I could see that my muscles were tense because I was hiding all of these emotions inside, things I was sad about and things I was scared about and things I was angry about. I was just a kind of a whole bunch of resistance, balls of resistance kind of arranged around the center. But here was the real magic. In that moment, I kind of saw down underneath all of my emotions and felt all the way down through the center of myself. And I got to a place where I realized that there's nothing but pure consciousness there. I'd be exactly that. I would feel exactly that if I'd grown up in the house next door. I would still have that pure consciousness, even though my programming would have been completely different. And so in that moment, I think I discovered what some people call a soul or my spirit or my essence. It was that part of myself that's sacred, that kind of is our gift that comes from the universe itself. And I started calling it pure consciousness. Sometimes I call it my essence, but it's who I really am beyond my programming.
Sure.
And so I had this experience, and then I got back up and I went back home and I went back to puffing my cigarettes, but I made a decision. And the decision was, I decided I would do anything I could to feel that pure consciousness in every moment. Because as soon as I got up and I walked back home, I lost it. I couldn't find it again down in me. And I had trouble finding the places where I felt scared, or the places where I felt sad, or the places where I felt angry. And so I knew I had to find it again, or I felt like I was going to die. And so I started making all of these changes. Here are the two things that I did. Have you ever heard of Ram Dass?
Yes, I have.
Yes. Okay, well, he was a famous spiritual teacher, but before that, he'd been a professor at Harvard in the psychology department. Now, my best friend at the time, Neil Marinello, had been a student of Ram Dass's when he was at Harvard, when my friend Neil was at Harvard. So, one afternoon in 1969, right after I had this experience where I fell down, I got a call from Neil, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to see one of my old college professors who lives up near you in New Hampshire." And he says, "I'm interested to see what he's doing because he just came back from India and he's got some kind of a new life trip going, and I want to find out what he's all about." So Neil came up, and I'd never heard of any of this before, and certainly never heard of Ram Dass, or didn't have any interest in yoga or anything like that. And so we went over to see Ram Dass, and it was the most amazing experience because he was there with his robes on, and he'd just gotten back from India. It was like it was it was actually at his father's house. His father owns this big estate up in New Hampshire. And so we went into the estate, and there's Ram Dass, and there was about a dozen young people, all with Indian garments on, saris and, baggy yoga pants and everything. I mean, it was the strangest thing I'd ever seen. I was an English major. See, this was not in my worldview at all. I didn't start studying psychology until after this happened. Mm-hmm. And so I went up to Ram Dass after he talked. He had a 3-hour lecture, which really blew me away because he didn't use any notes, and he just talked for 3 hours. And it was fascinating. And so I went to him afterwards and I said, "I may never see you again." It turned out I ended up seeing him many times, but I said, "I may never see you again, but can you just kind of look at me and give me some advice about what you would do if you were me?" And he said, he kind of looked at me and he said, "Yeah." He said, "In India, if people have problems that they're, in their marriage, or they have obesity or something like that, they might not go to a therapist about it, but they might go to a yoga retreat or a meditation retreat or something like that, where they have a chance to really go inside." And I asked him, "Okay, that sounds interesting. Where would I learn about something like that?" And here's the amazing thing he said. He said, "Don't worry, something will come to you." And I said, "Okay." And it was basically, just pay attention, something will come to me. And so the next day I was at the grocery store checking out, and I looked to my left, and there on a little kiosk was a paperback book called Yoga, Youth, and Reincarnation. And I picked it up. It almost seemed like it jumped off the shelf at me. And I picked it up, and what was it? But it was a whole book of yoga practices, meditation practices. What else was in it? Breathing. Oh, breathing was a big part of it. Pranayama breathing and all sorts of different yoga practices. But here was this thing. I'd just been asking Ram Dass, where would I learn about it? And here it was right there. And I bought it. I'll tell you how long ago it was. It cost 95 cents. Now paperback books cost $6.99 at the airport, but this was a whole different thing. So I took it home and I began doing the activities just at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, started doing them. And by midnight, I got to the meditation section, and I just started doing all the meditation activities. And I got into that pure consciousness space again that I'd had when I fell down. That was really a big moment for me, because I realized there it was all the time. I could go there anytime I wanted. Later on, I studied meditation formally and learned how to meditate more formally, but that was really that little moment where the whole thing began.
That consciousness, what does that feel like?
Consciousness, it feels like right now, as I tune into it, it's like an ocean of spaciousness. It's kind of like a spacious ocean that's everywhere in me. And it's maybe a little bit like visually like a faint cloud over the sun. You know, you can just see the sparkle of it. Or just maybe after it's rained, you know, the kind of the rainbow, the moisture in the air catches the light. That's kind of what it feels like inside.
So you can attune to that like right now?
Yes, I use it as my barometer, because if I don't feel that, then I think, what's wrong? Did I eat something that I shouldn't have eaten? Did I say something that I shouldn't have said? So I think that it's our birthright to live there all the time. And we learn a bunch of stuff that covers it up, but it's our job to uncover that and let that shine in real life.
Like, what do you mean though by like covers that up? Like what covers that up?
Traumas, for one thing. Like when I was 19, I met when I was a junior in high school, I fell in love with my high school sweetheart, and we fell even more in love when I was a senior. And then the first year of college, we were even more in love and started love making with each other and that kind of thing. And so we got really, really close. And then at the end of our sophomore year, she fell in love with somebody else and kind of dumped me. And I remember just being absolutely blown away and bewildered by it, you know, that I couldn't believe it had happened, because I'd constructed this fantasy in my mind that we would always be together. And I bet many of us had one of those kind of experiences, and they very seldom do last, but I didn't know that, you know, I didn't realize that. I thought this was forever. And so I went into this real depression, I think for probably 6 weeks, where I really couldn't think straight and I couldn't get my body to move around very much. And, you know, it's the kind of thing that I bet each one of us has a stack of things like that, you know, like Carol, my colleague who wrote the book with me, she was born into this beautiful life. And then suddenly when she was 12, her father died and her house burned down. And suddenly, boom, 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 you know, suddenly she's in a whole different life at age 12. And that's not unusual. You know, I bet just about every one of us, if you stop us on the street, have a story of something like that. But those kind of traumas cover over our natural feeling of being lucky and having life be on our side. We think life must not be on our side if these terrible things happen. And so we get into that kind of relationship with life.
Well, how do you clear that stuff up so you can feel that consciousness?
The first move is always to love yourself for wherever you are. There's never any need to beat ourselves up for wherever we are. So many people try to criticize their way out of some way of being that they don't like, but that's like a dog chasing its tail around. It doesn't go anywhere. The only way out is actually through. And the way you do it is by loving and accepting all of the things that happened and all of the things that are. It's loving and accepting yourself exactly as you are begins the change process. And then you simply make commitments to where you want to go. But the actual first moment is that moment where you accept something or love something that you've never been able to love before. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's something you've done that's hard for you to love and accept about yourself. But I promise you, things stay stuck until we love them as they are, and then they begin to change and we begin to breathe with it. I was just looking across the room to see if I had one to show you, but I don't see one here. But we have these wristbands that we give away at the end of seminars. And I bet you've seen those kind of silicone wristbands a bunch of times, but this one says on it, breathe, move, love. Because if you're stuck, wherever you're stuck, one thing you can always do is take a conscious breath. And the reason you can do that is because your breathing is connected to your automatic nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and it's connected to your conscious nervous system. So you can forget about your breathing all day long and it'll do itself, but then you can also take a big conscious nurturing breath to kind of shake things up and get things moving inside. So we say breathe, move, love. Keep it simple. Breathe, move your body position. Don't stay stuck in one place for a long time. And then ultimately, everything comes out of our ability to love ourselves or not. If we're critical and hateful toward ourselves, we're going to have a critical, hateful experience of life outside ourselves. So everything outside ourselves comes from those inner mindsets and body sets and heart sets.
That's so powerful. Yeah. A buddy of mine, Paul Selig, he says, what you damn damns you back. Right. Like, so basically what I take from that is what the vibe, the positivity, the negativity that I put out will come back to me. The thing that I struggle with, the thing I don't even struggle with it. I'm at like the starting line of like meditating and trying to learn how to meditate properly and feel that consciousness. And like, I'll sit down every morning early when the sun is rising and, try to clear my thoughts. Like, how should one be meditating? I know that I concentrate on the breath, but it seems like there's always, obviously the mind is running, right? Like, how do you quiet that? Like, how would you suggest that I try to meditate to reach consciousness?
Well, I think the key move in meditation, whether you're using the breath or a mantra that you're cycling through your mind or whatever you're meditating, your system is, it involves this one thing that happens. Like if you're meditating on your breath, you feel your breath, it's coming in and out of your body, you feel the rising and falling of it, and then all of a sudden you're off on a chain of thoughts and you've forgotten about your breath. But then the key move in meditation is when you find you're on those chain of thoughts to gently return to the breathing again. It's that back to one, back to one. Like I studied in a Zen monastery. I'm trying to remember the year. It was in the 1970s. I went to Tassajara Zen Monastery, which is up near Carmel, California. And I went there for a 7-day meditation retreat. And I remember the first day of the meditation, I went in the meditation hall at 5 a.m. or whatever, and there was everybody getting set up around on the cushions and all that, probably about 60 or 75 people in this big room. And my first instruction, the teacher came over to us to give us instructions, the newbies that were there for the first time. And he told us how to sit and how to put our hands in our lap and how to try to keep our spines erect. And he said we could close our eyes or open, it didn't matter. But he said basically this: tune into your breathing and count each breath until you get up to 10, and then go back to 1 again. And if you forget along the way, if you go off on a chain of thought, always just come back to 1. Just come back to 1. So there's no penalty for losing it. Just come back as soon as you remember again. And so try to keep it easy. Try to be gentle with yourself is my advice on learning to meditate. Be gentle with yourself. Don't criticize yourself for having thoughts. Just when you notice you're getting thoughtsy, bring it back to the breath again. And then you'll be with your breath for 15 or 20 seconds. But I must have counted to 10, I don't know how many hundreds of times during that time. But, here's the other funny thing. This was about 5 o'clock in the morning when he gave us this instruction about counting to 10 and come back to 1. And he said, I'll be back at 9 to check on you. 4 hours.
That's a long
I remember
time.
my mind sort of exploding, what? And, but the interesting thing was I was there for a week. And by the end of that time, sort of time disappeared. I would start meditating and then hours later, the bell would ring and okay, And so I think the more we focus on these kinds of things, the more we build up a rich inner life, the more we can tune into it easily. So I've been doing this now for almost 50 years, so it's kind of second nature to me. But when you first get started, my suggestion is simply to be very gentle with yourself.
Sure. No, I mean, like, so when you sit, do you like sit cross-legged and,
I
like you
don't
sit?
know.
No. How
I
do you
have a knee
sit?
replacement, so I can't sit cross-legged to save my
Well, back
neck.
then, back then at the Zen retreat, like, how did you
Oh,
sit?
oh well, it was on these rounded cushions, and yes, we were encouraged to sit cross-legged on them. But frankly, most of us like probably 60 of the people there were like the people that live there all year long, that are kind of professional Zen meditators that live in the community. And then there was about maybe 6 or 8 of us that were just there for 5 days or 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think almost all of us had trouble sitting cross-legged for any length of time. What we would do is we would put our cushions back against the wall so we would have something to kind of support our spines. And I've never been really good at sitting cross-legged anyway, so half the time I would just have to sit, with my legs out just because they don't feel
Sure.
comfortable cross-legged.
Sure.
But nowadays, I'll tell you, this is the chair I meditate in every morning over here. It's kind of a big, easy chair that I can make it sit up straight or I can lean it back, either
Sure.
one.
It's like a recliner kind of thing.
It's called a zero gravity chair that when I meditate, I sit up straight in it. But after meditation, I hit a button and I go,
To go back to sleep.
backwards and rest for a while.
That's awesome. So have you, when you meditate, you talk about experiencing that consciousness, like, have you ever gotten to an extreme level of like higher consciousness, like to experience everything, right? Like, have you raised that consciousness level? Have you ever experienced God during like a meditation, I guess?
Oh, well, I've experienced many, many, many things. What I mostly experience that means the most to me is a kind of an expansion where there's no difference between me and the universe itself. I feel connected to everything. And that's my version of God. I don't know if that's what other people would call God, but it's like everything being open to everything at once, feeling part of the universe, feeling completely open to creative energy, accepting of everything all at once. That's kind of my whole person vision of God. So I don't usually use that language because everybody else has their own version of what God is. And so if you're speaking to a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim or something, they have their own idea of it. But what I'm interested in is the thing that all of us have in common, which is that pure consciousness.
So a buddy of mine, Sean Webb, he wrote a book, which I would, definitely recommend for you. And I'll definitely make an intro for you guys to get on his show. He wrote a book called Mind Hacking Happiness, and this is like 1,500 pages. So they had to separate it into 2 volumes. And it's essentially about how you turn your mind around and on itself and kind of be more aware of your emotions, He's a great dude, great guy. His podcast is hilarious. I think it's called 2 Seals and a Walrus. So he has 2 guys as co-hosts, which are actually naval SEALs, and he calls himself the Walrus. But great dude. And he was talking about in his book where he was meditating, doing Zen type meditation, where he was laying on a bed and he was trying to eliminate the thought. And he went in for, his intention was, hey, look, I want to experience a higher consciousnness. I want to experience God in whatever form that may be. And he basically explained the same type of event that happened to you, right? Where your consciousness expanded into the universe and you were one with everything. He actually talks about an experience where he went to a different country and he witnessed a horrific event. I think it was like some type of rape or something from like in Africa, like a soldier raping a woman, but he felt the love of the universe, right? He felt the love for the woman and the soldier, because it was like that awareness that we're all one. And that it's like that, it's like, I don't know how to explain it because I never experienced it, but just listening to that story was just so powerful. And that's, you explaining your higher consciousness story to me, that's the same type of idea that I get when I talk to people that have experienced that. And that's why I started meditating, because I want to feel consciousness. And I have to admit, there's a lot of muck in there that I have to deal with first. But a lot of it's unconscious too, right? It's a lot of stuff that you have to deal with growing up. And, there's things that you don't remember because you obviously blocked it out when you're growing up, and you're just trying to, I don't know. I'm just trying to be self-aware, like you said,
I appreciate you moving in that direction, because you're getting underway at it at a relatively young age, which is a great thing. I was mentioning my obesity as a child. I keep a picture on my desk of me when I was in the 5th grade. I don't know if you can.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah, you're
that
handsome
very well,
little devil. Handsome little devil. I don't know what you're talking about.
And I also keep this on my desk too. If you're not in awe, you're not paying attention.
Awesome. I want to get one of those wrist bracelets that you're talking about.
Good. I'm sure we have your address if you've been communicating with my assistant, which I imagine you have. But if you give her your address, we'll get you one. I'm getting pinged here to go to my next interview here in a few minutes. Do you have any wrap-up questions for me? Or
I'm sorry. I didn't even realize what time it was. I'm sorry, Gay. Yeah. So how can people connect with you?
Well, right now, the best thing to do is to go to consciousluck.com, because consciousluck.com, our new book, is all about owning your own luck. And it has some 2 guided meditations there that if you buy the book through consciousluck.com, you can get it through Amazon and all of those places. But if you leave your receipt at consciousluck.com, you can get these free 2 guided meditations that go along with the book, and I highly recommend it. So if you're open to changing your luck, go to consciousluck.com. And also, if you want to just learn more about me and my wife, we've been operating our institute here for 40 years, and so we plan to continue to be here. Just go to hendricks.com, HENDRICKS.com, and you can find out all about us there.
Gay, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I really enjoyed your book, and I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Good. I enjoyed it too.
I want to say thank you to Gay for coming on the show and hanging out. This has been phenomenal, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did making it. If you guys want to reach out to me, you can do that by going to yoursuperiorself.com. Leave me a message. Let me know what you're up to. Social media, Instagram, TDowns80. At Twitter, DownsTrey. And you can check me out on Facebook. Let me know. All right, guys. I'll talk to you later.